Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 7, 2017 meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have a roll call, please?
Council members Agajanian.
Present.
Devine.
Present.
Najarian.
From Washington, D.C., present.
Sinanian.
Here.
Mayor Garpetian.
Here. Mr. Najarian, would you lead us to the flag salute, please? If you can hear us. If not, Mr. Sinanian will take care of it.
Please join me in pledging allegiance to the flag of our nation. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation, which will be delivered by Rich Garner, Senior Pastor from First United Methodist Church of Glendale.
Let us pray. In this season, O Lord God, the sun sets early, the winds blow cooler, leaves fall, and our thoughts turn to celebration. Let us rejoice in all who join us around the table in the warmth of family and friends, and let us remember those who are cold and hungry. Let us give thanks for harvest and plenty, for all that enables our lives to be rich and easy, and let us reach out with compassion to those who are in poverty and pain. Let us be grateful for the freedoms we enjoy, for this community we appreciate, for those who lead, for all who serve, for any who sacrifice on behalf of the needs of others. And let us seek justice for the oppressed, healing for the broken, light for those who sit in darkness, hope for the despairing. Help us, O God, to receive the blessing you offer to us, and to discover how this blessing may be shared with others. We pray, confident that the Holy is among us. Amen.
Amen.
May we please have your report?
The agenda for the November 7, 2017 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Friday, November 3rd, 2017 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And what's next?
Next is presentation and appointments. At 3A is agenda preview for the meetings of Tuesday, November 14, 2017.
Ms. Beers?
Mayor Garpetian, members of the City Council, for November 14th for the Housing Authority, we have no business agenda items. We do have a special meeting in the afternoon to commence at 3 p.m. for the Glendale City Council. This is Director of Community Development and Public Works and General Manager of Glendale Water and Power, and this is the citywide sustainability report. In the evening for the City Council meeting to commence at 6 p.m., we have a number of consent items. General Manager of Glendale Water and Power, this is a contract award for hauling and disposal of construction debris for GWP. General Manager of Glendale Water and Power, this is a proposed upgrade of the Grandview Pump House switchgear. Chief of Police, agreement for maintenance services with Quagan for the liquid handling robots purchased in 2013 and DNA extraction robot purchased in 2014. And this is for our DNA laboratory. Chief of Police, United States Department of Justice 2017 JAG grant. This is an application to purchase computer forensic lab equipment. Director of Public Works and Community Development, this is award of a professional services agreement for construction, inspection, and testing services for the Beeline Maintenance Facility. Director of Public Works, Glendale Regional Arterial Traffic Performance Measurement System. Interim Chief Information Officer, this is a contract amendment for Next Level for land permitting assessment and other project management duties. Under action, we have 3 items. Director of Public Works, this is a contract for the provision of parts and services for the maintenance of city-owned Ford vehicles. Director of Community Services and Parks, the Duke-Magian Nature Education Center. And City Manager and City Attorney, this is a discussion and consideration of local regulatory options of the medical and adult use of cannabis regulation and Safety Act. And lastly, we do have a hearing. This is Director of Community Development. This is regarding a zone change and zone map amendment. This is at 533 through 539 East Elk Avenue. And that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Since we have Mr. Najarian joining us via phone from Washington, I would like to move item 8D. Take them out of order, 8D and 8A. Would you please read item 8D into the record, please?
Mr. Mayor and Council, item 8D is Director of Human Resources and City Attorney regarding interim city manager appointment and compensation. 8D is resolution authorizing the appointment of Yasmin Beers as interim city manager and authorizing acting compensation for interim city manager.
Okay, Mr. Ochoa.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, with Mr. Ochoa's impending departure as city manager, effective November 17th, 2017, the council has had discussions regarding the search process for selecting a replacement for Mr. Ochoa for the city manager position. Council has directed us, though, to bring this resolution forward to you to appoint Assistant City Manager Yasmin Beers as the interim city manager, effective November 18th. In conjunction with the resolution, there's also a proposed acting compensation pay for the term that she's serving as acting city manager or interim city manager, which would put her salary rate at $22,871 per month, which is a 12% adjustment from her current salary. So with that, we are recommending approval of the resolution.
Okay. Any discussions, questions? Motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
There's a second. Nigerian was a second.
Najarian seconded. Okay, roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine, yes. Najarian,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Mr. Mayor and Council, next item at 8A is City Clerk regarding California Voter Participation Rights Act, CVPRA, and proposed changes to Glendale Municipal Election Administration. 8A1 is a resolution directing the City Clerk and City Attorney to prepare a proposed charter amendment to change the date of the city's general municipal election to the date of a statewide primary or statewide general election. 8A2 is a motion providing an alternate or additional direction to staff. And with that, Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm going to switch seats for one moment so I can run the presentation from here and present to you this report. Mr. Mayor and Council, as stated in this report, in the last few years, the California State Legislature has spent a considerable amount of time and attention on issues related to reforms on state and local level, enacting legislation that impacts how all aspects of the election processes, from voter registration, administration, and even the timing of elections. Each bill has had a unique impact, and today before you, you have the challenge of addressing the impact of such a bill. In 2015, the state legislature adopted and Governor Brown signed into law SB 415, which requires cities cities with voter turnout rates lower than that of the statewide elections to consolidate with the state. SB 415, which was codified as the California Voter Participation Rights Act, CVPRA, added sections 14050 and 14057 to the California Elections Code, and severely limits the ability of local agencies to run elections in a manner of their own choosing. Now, this has been in action since 2015, but there was some question as to whether this impacted charter cities. In your report, there's a summary of the CVPRA. I'll just read briefly from it. I won't read all of the summary because it is long, but it says, commencing January 1st, 2018, a political subdivision is prohibited from holding an election other than on a statewide election date if holding an election on a non-concurrent date has previously resulted in voter turnout for a regularly scheduled election, and that political subdivision being at least 25% less than the average voter turnout within a political subdivision for the previous 4 statewide general elections, except as specified. Now, again, it was not settled whether the CVPRA applies to charter cities such as Glendale, and as such, in consultation with some of our neighboring cities that are also charter cities such as Pasadena, Burbank, and others, Pasadena, through their assembly member, Chris Holden, solicited an opinion from the California Attorney General asking the following questions. does the CVPRA directly apply to charter cities and local school districts if both entities' district elections are governed by the charter of the city, such as Glendale's? And number 2, could a municipal election held by a charter city on an otherwise valid but non-statewide election date that produced a low voter turnout be considered a matter of statewide concern sufficient to negate local control? We received Attorney General Opinion 16-603 on July 13, 2017, approximately a year after Pasadena had requested that opinion. And the AG's office, citing the case, and I apologize if I mispronounce this, Haragui versus City of Palmdale, a case from 2014.
Shh. Quiet in the room, please.
Determined that indeed, in the AG's opinion, the CVPRA, the California Voter Participation Rights Act, did apply to charter cities. So, based on the formula outlined in the CVPRA, if a city has a low voter turnout for its local elections, then it must consolidate. Now, how low? We stated in the summary 25% less than the average voter turnout within the political subdivision for the previous 4 statewide general elections, as stated. Now, how does that impact Glendale? Looking at this chart, we took a look at our city elections, which are held biennially in April of odd-numbered years. We went backwards from our most recent 2017 April election to 2011. And this shows you what our percentage of voter turnout was. Normally, Glendale has a better than average, I would say, compared to local cities. There are approximately 88 cities in Los Angeles County, and we tend to do slightly better than most of them. Some cities do exceptionally well, like Santa Monica, which has 60% turnout. But we have 22. We see that we have 25. Back in 2009, I think we had 27% turnout, but still, our average is only 22.95%. Now, in Glendale, in November general elections, alternating between gubernatorial and presidential elections from 2010 to 2016, we see that we have an average of approximately 53%. And in the box below, the larger box, you see that the difference between the two is 30%. So, given that difference, the formula, Glendale should comply with the CVPRA, given the AG's opinion. Other factors to consider, were we to say, well, the Attorney General's opinion is only an opinion, and again, we've gone back and forth with the city attorney and deliberating this and with other cities, because this is, again, a point of consternation among charter cities that see this as an encroachment on their independence and being able to govern themselves, and in a fundamental right of charter cities. There are other factors to consider, and the most important one is probably the cost of conducting our own elections. The cost of elections are rising, and the sole California vendor, Martin & Chapman, is not going to be able to run elections anymore. As more and more cities decide to consolidate with the county, there are less cities that are able to allow Martin & Chapman to maintain their current model of business. The county, on the other hand, will be the only vendor, so to speak, to allow cities to conduct their elections. And at least here in Southern California, when our staff started calling around to research to see if there's any other alternate vendors that are licensed to conduct elections in the state, we discovered that at least in Northern California, all cities already have their elections run by their county registrar recorder's offices. Also, the cost difference of standalone April versus consolidated elections, meaning March or November, are very significant, as you can see in Exhibit D of your report. And if you go to Exhibit D, you will see that if we were to maintain an April election date as we have now, the costs will be above $1.3 million, almost, or $1.8 million for an election cycle where we have 2 seats up for election, and upwards of over $2 million in those cycles where there are 3 council seats. Also, I should note that if anyone is confused why we say a March primary, it's because of Senate Bill 568, which was introduced by State Senator Ricardo Lara and signed by the governor, which as of 2020 would move California's presidential primary date to March from June. So the costs of the last 3 Glendale elections have been rising, in part because as SB 415, where the CVPRA has been implemented and more cities have been consolidating with the county, Martin and Chapman has been raising its costs. You see a significant jump from 2015 to 2017 because we went from having at-large elections to having the Glendale Unified School District and the Glendale Community College districts having district elections or trustee area elections in this last cycle. In addition to that, we also had a cost increase from Martin and Chapman because of the aforementioned reasons. And here you also see the cost estimates that I just quoted you. Now, if we were to consolidate, we see that the county has quoted us, and their letter is also in your report. It is Exhibit C, sent to us from the Registrar Recorder of the county, Dean Logan, and the Fiscal Operations Manager, Ann Smith. They have quoted us also in separate communications. They have indicated that they would be able to run consolidated elections, but we have a deadline of January of 2018, January 1st, 2018, when we have to adopt a plan. That's why we are having this meeting today. Before the end of this year, Council must adopt this resolution saying what plan they wish to move forward with. If we were to do one, having a March election would cost the city $252,000, between $252,000 to $254,000, and having an election in November would cost between $234,000 to $237,000. The difference is negligible, approximately $17,000, $18,000, or less than $20,000, let's say. So it's really up to, I would say that given the difference between millions of dollars and tens of thousands of dollars, it is not much. So here are the options that we present to council to select from. And it is similar to options that other cities in Los Angeles County have explored as well. I should also note, and we will have a summary at the end of this to your neighbors for you to have a better idea of what they have done, that most cities have also already made decisions as to what direction they're moving in. Option A is to consolidate with a statewide primary election. Officers elected in 2015, and in this case for your consideration, 2 council seats. Election terms will conclude in April 2019. Option A extends the terms for those electeds in April 2015 by 11 months to coincide with the proposed statewide primary election date in March 2020. That is the statewide election. Also, it extends the terms for those elected in 2017, the 3 council seats, the city clerk seat, and city treasurer, by 11 months to coincide with the proposed statewide primary election date in March 2022. This would allow us to comply with the CVPRA. And this gives you a visual as to what that would look like. Again, this is when it would be our regularly scheduled election date in April, and this is the proposed election date. It is an extension of just under a year. And this is for the 3 council seats. Option B is officers elected in 2015. Election terms would conclude in April 2019. Option B extends the terms for those elected in April 2015 by 19 months because, again, it would be going from the March primary all the way waiting until November, and it would coincide with a proposed statewide general election date in November 2020. Also, it extends the terms for those elected in 2017 as well by 19 months. But again, because you're waiting all the way till November, and this is what that would look like. So it would go from April, extending all the way to the November general date. And this is for the 3 council seats, as well as city clerk and city treasurer. Option C, this would be standalone April 2019 election and then a statewide primary election. This option requires the city to run a standalone election with Martin and Chapman, and Martin and Chapman has indicated that 2019 will be the last election that they will be able to run. Those elected in April 2019 election, the 2 council seats, their terms to be concluded in 2023. Option C reduces the terms by 13 months to coincide with the proposed statewide primary election date in March 2022. Also reduces the terms of those elected in 2017, the 3 city council seats, city clerk, city treasurer, by 13 months to coincide with the proposed statewide primary election date in March 2020. And this is for those. And lastly, option D. This option requires the city to run a standalone election with Martin and Chapman in 2019. Those elected in 2019 election for the 2 council seats, terms to be concluded in 2023. Option D reduces the terms by 5 months to coincide with the proposed statewide general election date in November 2022. Also reduces the terms for those elected in 2019, 3 city council seats, city clerk, city treasurer, by 5 months to coincide with the proposed statewide general election date in November 2020. Now, this is what that would look like. Now, other cities, the plan overview, Burbank did vote to unanimously to comply with SB 415 CVPRA. They eliminated their primary election system. They will have a one-off winner-take-all system, much like actually exactly like as Glendale has now. They have extended their council terms by 19 months. They will put a charter amendment to the voters on June 2018, which is when this next statewide primary would be. And they have voted to consolidate with November elections. Pasadena voted by a vote of 5-3 to comply, and their plan is still pending. They have till the end of the year to hash out the details, and we're following what is going on in Pasadena very closely. Long Beach, which used to actually run their own elections, they used to print their own ballots. They had a 2-vote Tuesday, which meant that when you would walk into a polling place, you would go to one table and vote the county-wide ballots, and then you would go to another table and vote the local city ballot. They were one of the only jurisdictions that was able to run their own elections, and we actually did approach them and ask them if we really had to, whether they would be able to run our elections if needed, and they indicated as much as they like us and they would like to work with us, they would not be able to because there was a whole slew of certifications. The state has to certify you to be able to run other elections, and they would not be able to. And what they have concluded to do is to comply with the California Voting or Participation Rights Act as well. And they are consolidating in 2020. Their plan is pending as well. And they have district elections, just as Pasadena does, which is part of why their process as to how they are going to comply is still pending. So that is where we are today. There is a resolution before you with the 4 options, A, B, C, and D outlined. If there's anything that the city attorney, which has been instrumental in helping us research this and has been working with us on this report, would like to add, I'll turn this over to City Attorney Garcia for any comments that he'd like to add.
Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Kasakian. Just to emphasize again, even though they're on the Attorney General's opinion on whether this applies to charter cities or not, whether or not one agrees or disagrees with it, it's very risky, I think, to continue with our current election without complying with it. And then it does need to be emphasized again, even if we were to decide to keep our election dates in the April of odd number of years, we'll be sort of the person on the island at a very, very high cost to do so. So I concur with the city clerk's recommendation for those reasons.
Okay. I have one card. I'd like to have Mr. Moy speak before we deliberate. Mr. Moy?
Eight
8A? You already, I have your card here, Mr. Moy.
And for anyone who's wondering why this item was taken out of order, it's because Mr. Councilmember Najarian is he's calling in from Washington D.C. from his conference.
D. D.
Too late?
Okay. So I have no card on this item. Who would like to go first?
I'll take a crack at it.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we've been through different permutations of this process. We put the issue of districting in front of our voters, what, 4 years ago? 3 years ago? Was it 2?
Was it 2?
Okay, so just 2 years ago, our residents said, no, we don't want districts, we like it the way it is. And we, at the time, started considering these voting day issues and looking at CVPRE, getting advice from council. And it sounds like the uncertainty that's embedded in the CVPRE is still there. There's no conclusive sort of answer that it does impact charter cities like the city of Glendale. But there's this issue of who's actually going to conduct our elections. And so far we've used a professional outfit, this Martin Chapman, is that what it's called? And they've done a good job, but apparently they have a monopoly position and they're going out of business. So they're not going to do it. No one else. City of Long Beach doesn't want to do it, and no one else will. And we're sort of forced to make a decision. But it's not just the fiscal issues. The issue of conducting our own elections will cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars more than if we were to consolidate with the county. Also, these numbers, these voter participation averages are worrisome, and if we can adopt a new date for our votes, for our voting, and thus increase voter participation, then it's probably a good result. So, looking at the options that I'm given by our clerk, I think the most, to me, unless my colleagues can convince me otherwise, the most viable one is to extend the terms by 11-month period to the March primaries for both the 2019 elections and 2021 elections.
So option A?
Option A. Option B, I think, creates a dual problem. One is that our terms get extended too much by 19 months instead of 11. And second, if you have an election that's coinciding with the presidential elections, and if we have the type of presidential elections that we had last year, our local issues, our local elections are really going to be completely subsumed by the national elections and the statewide elections. And our local issues will become irrelevant or will become overshadowed by the issues that are out there on a national level. So I think we don't want to do that. We do want to retain some sort of autonomy or independence in our ability to put our issues, our local issues, out there for the voters during local elections. So for those reasons, I think option A is the better one. And option C and D really kicks the can down the road. You end up with a similar result just 4 years later. I don't know why we would do that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sinanian.
I'll go next
Councilmember
then. Well, I think for a lot of reasons we are kind of, we have to comply with the legislation. And I think we have to look at the cost. I think if we want to be fiscally responsible, we have to look at the cost. And that would mean that option B, that would be the least costly, far less costly, of course, than the standalone elections. The main objective of this legislation is to increase voter turnout. And just looking at the statistics that we were presented, the general election brings a 50% turnout in our city. So I think in order to reach the goal of the most of our residents voting, that would be option B. And I understand the fear about our local election being lost, but as I understand it, I think I read that Senator Portantino is presenting legislation that would place, if for municipalities that go for one of these options, either the primary or the general, that he is trying to get legislation passed that would put the local election at the top of the ballot, and the primary or the general election, the nationwide election, afterwards, so that we wouldn't get, and I think that's probably his concern as well. And so that would put us at the top of the ballot and the rest of it at the end. So for those reasons, I'd like to, my preference is option B.
Quick comment, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
And kudos to our senator for thinking ahead and looking out for us locals. But of course, that just takes care of the issue on the ballot. It doesn't take care of the discourse that's out there for months before the elections. It's the discourse. It's the white noise that's being put out there by media and sort of making so much noise where our voices become muffled. That's what I'm concerned about, not the actual moment of election where what the ballot looks like. It'll help. It'll be helpful, but won't take care of the broader issue.
Councilman Alexanian.
Option A asks for extension of my term for 11 months. Option B, extending my term for 19 months, same as my colleague's term will be extended. But there is cost-wise, doesn't matter, it's insignificant. But very important issue, which has not been discussed here, is the Governor of California signed he signed the law into law that from now on, the measures, propositions, which will be offered by the public, they will put it on November ballot or November election. For just one example of the differences, last election, 2016, presidential election, there were 17 measures which was offered by the public, a special interest, whoever. And they spent a little bit less than $1 billion. Lots of flyers, lots of advertisement will be, again, this will come up again. The measures will not going to go away. There will be, this trend of having more measures are coming because the special interests, day by day, they get stronger. So the difference between March and November is very big. That the measures which the public were offering is not going to be on March election. So it will be less for the public to get involved and to know what they are voting for if they are interested in local elections. So that's the reason I offer the option A, because it extends my term for 11 months, and people will it will be easier to navigate between the measures and, the election matters. Of course, the measures which will be offered by the California legislators, they can put in March election. So that's why I think it's not going to be as crowded as November, so people have better chance to spend some time and concentrate on the local election. So I would suggest option A.
Councilmember Najarian, are you there? Are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, floor is all yours.
Well, I would support option A, and I think the important thing is that we have to have as many informed voters as possible come to the polls. And I agree with Mr. Sinanian, who is concerned that in a November general election, our messages will be priced out of the market due to the high media prices, and it will be lost by the noise, or the voters will be driven by some sort of, as we saw in the last election, anti-sentiment towards one or two of the big-ticket candidates. So I do support option A, which would line us up with the March primary election. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Najarian. I support option A as well because I can't find it in my heart to extend my own term by 19 months. With 11 months, I have to wrestle with it. But this is something that was put in front of us. We have to go to this route. It's a state mandate. My other concern is overall, by county running all of our elections, imagine if they run the elections for every city and they have to count all these ballots on that November night or even the primary night. It's just it's going to be I hope it goes well, but I have my concerns on that as well, as far as all these different local elections being run with the countywide elections, and I don't think it's a smart move to do it, but again, we are preempted, we have to go to this route, and the cost of $10,000 up or down, I don't know if it makes a huge difference on our elections, but overall, I support option A as well, just because the term is less, and I think we can have more informed voters, as was mentioned by my colleagues, on the March election. So with that, is there a motion?
I'll move the item, but I do have a question. So whatever we approve, does the charter have to reflect that? Or
as a senior report, what we'll do is we will come back to you in January with a proposed charter amendment that will go before the voters. But in discussion with our city attorney and our legal counsel in the city attorney's department, we understand that we may have to, because this is state law that was passed requiring local jurisdictions to comply, a court could just require you to change your date if the situation arises. And a situation could arise in the form of a lawsuit. So I'll allow the city attorney to expand on how that could possibly happen and how you could have the date changed.
As the city clerk said, we're recommending that you do this by way of charter amendment so that we don't have a charter language that's inconsistent with what we're actually doing or inconsistent with state law. And so the charter amendment language would look in a manner that you'd have a ballot language. It would suggest it would indicate that the date of our municipal election would change to the date of the statewide primary. Not necessarily March, whatever, but the date of the statewide primary, because the state could adjust that in the future. And again, as already referenced, this is a state law which the state is of the view that it preempts our local regulations. So if we didn't do a charter amendment, or if we put the charter amendment on the ballot and for whatever reason it didn't pass, there'd be a very strong argument that regardless, we still have to comply with it. We think it's just a better practice, a better governance structure to have your charter language consistent with the practice that we're going to go forward with. So that's why we're recommending it. And so all that charter language would come back to you in January, and then it has to be adopted with time to make it to the June 2018 ballot.
And we're working on, we're working on this from every angle. We couldn't agree with you more that we have a great state senator who is listening to his constituents. In fact, SB 25, which is the legislation that you've referenced, was suggested to him from our office. So that is a piece of legislation that's coming from Glendale if it were to pass, which would reverse the order of the ballot. The last is first law, hopefully, which would flip the order. Hopefully it will pass. If it doesn't, we still have to comply with this law.
Okay.
So I have a standing motion.
Is there a second?
Just so as we're clear, it's moving the item with option A.
A.
Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, the second was from Councilmember Agajanian. All right, Council Members Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
In order to make this unanimous, I will vote yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes.
Thank you.
What is next, please?
Returning to the regular agenda.
Thank you, Mr.
four-
Najarian. Are you going to stay with us, or
Do you want me to stay?
it's up to you? I know you're very passionate about our
Pretty
meetings.
good meeting without me so far.
We can manage, Mr. Najarian. Have fun. Thank you for joining
Thank
us.
you, and good night. Please excuse me, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Mr. Najarian. I'm sorry, Mr. Kasakian.
Next item is a consent calendar, including minutes following routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
Okay. Is there a motion for consent?
I'll move the consent items.
I second it.
Roll call, please.
Council Members Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian, Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item on the calendar, item 5, is City Council and staff comments.
Okay. Comments? Ms. Devine.
Ms. Devine, I have a list here. Bear with me. First of all, I want to thank the Armenian Society of Los Angeles for honoring this city council over the weekend. It's very much appreciated to know that that we are appreciated, because this is not an easy job, as you can well see, to make these decisions for the entire community. So, and the best decisions. So I want to thank them for that recognition. On Friday, I was at Kiwanis, and most of you know that we've hired a consultant, Pat Hines, from Smart Moves. She's coordinating our B Street Smart program. You've seen the banners, and they do a safe cycling program at our schools and at some events, and eventually she's going to be gone. And to fill that gap of teaching these K through 4th graders cycling safety, Kiwanis is going to has given her funds to buy Rodeo City so that the Kiwanians will be trained to mentor children and teach them this program of safe cycling after our consultants are gone. And so I want to send out a special thanks to them. They're going to be at schools and they'll be at events to teach our kids safe cycling. I think that's a really good thing. I wanted to mention that at the Antaeus Theater, this is live theater in Glendale, they're presenting Dangerous Liaison. It is fantastic. If you can make it to see this play, please do. It's really it's well done. It got rave reviews, and it's one of the best that they've done this season. And I have to mention that while I was having dinner before the theater on Broadway here, a delivery truck ran into a tree on Broadway right in front of the restaurant where we were having dinner. And it was a huge branch, and it was lucky that there wasn't somebody under the branch, because they would have suffered some injuries. But I have to say that we got on the phone right away, and we got in touch with Public Works, Mr. Galanian, and a fellow, Siddiqui, came out like in 10 minutes. It was not more than 10, 15 minutes, and he was there on the street cutting up the branch, getting it out of the way so that nobody would get hurt, trip, fall, whatever. So I want to thank Mr. Galani and Public Works, and especially Siddiqui. He was so very nice to all the people that passed by. I attended the first annual Montrose Holiday Wine Walk on Saturday night. It was very well.
Second annual.
Well, it's actually, they're calling this one the Holiday Wine Walk. So that, because I questioned that too. I said, well, this is the second one. No, this is the first holiday. So to start your Christmas shopping, they all have, the shops were decorated, and it's a good catch. But most importantly, it was fun because it brought people from all over, from La Cañada, Flint Ridge, and Burbank, and Pasadena, all wandering the streets and discovering the uniqueness of this great destination in our city. So please meet me in Montrose for your Christmas shopping. It's beautifully decorated. And finally, and this is to promote public art, and I think Mr. Kasakian has a, do you have a slide,
Yes,
Mr. Kasakian, of this? The City of Glendale is inviting and encouraging those who live, work, and play in Glendale to visit one of 20, there are 20, Word on the Street signs created by Scott Frochauer. These signs, located in our parks and in our libraries, are meant to surprise and to delight viewers by giving them a positive and a reassuring message. So if you go to the 20, capture the visit on your selfie, with a selfie, follow at MyGlendale on Instagram, and share it on social media with the hashtag MyGlendalePublicArt for a chance to enter a prize drawing for the ultimate Glendale gift bag. The contest begins right now and ends on November the 30th. A winner will be selected and contacted via direct message on Instagram within 24 hours. To learn more about the campaign and discover sign locations, please visit myglendalecitynews.org. And they're a lot of fun, and I think you'll get a big kick out of them. So go take your selfies and put them on Instagram and win a prize.
What's the
Thank
prize?
you. It's a gift bag. It's called the ultimate Glendale gift bag. So have fun with it and enjoy. It's really it's a fun 20 locations around Glendale. So go and visit libraries and parks.
It's like that Go Pokemon thing?
Yes, in Glendale.
So I hope no one gets hurt.
No, they won't. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Councilmember Agajanian? If you're not ready, maybe Councilmember Sinani.
Sure. I would also like to extend my thanks to the Armenian Society of Los Angeles for honoring the City Council, as my colleague so succinctly put it. You actually don't get thanked that much for being a council member and doing a full-time job that's described as a part-time job, and really putting yourself out there. So thank you, very appreciated. So not this weekend, but the weekend prior to that, we participated, and we being, I think most of my colleagues were there, at the ribbon cutting of the Chevy Chase Country Club, which was kind of a sweet event, because those of us who've lived in Glendale for a long time, and those of us who've lived in that neighborhood ever, whether it's Emerald Isle or Chevy Chase Canyon, have seen that property, fall into disrepair, really be ignored, and the golf course really be in bad shape. And finally, a few years ago, a group of investors took over and has done an amazing job in making this country club look fantastic. I mean, it's really nice. And I think everyone should really go visit it and see what a good old facility we have now in Glendale, and how it's going to serve its residents and beyond. Anyway, great place. It looks amazing. Thursday, I represented the mayor and the city council at the Glendale Health Summit, during which the city of Glendale and health professionals, medical institutions came together to figure out a health strategy, or a strategy for a healthier Glendale, a promotion of a lifestyle that will make all of us healthy and make us live longer, make us enjoy life more, and and make sure that we have something that's thought out, as opposed to sort of assuming that we can all do that on our own, which is most of the time not the case. And it was very well attended, and I hope that very good things come of it. Also last week, my colleagues and I met with Japan's Consul General, whom we meet periodically, who came to visit us, but he brought a guest with him, and this time it was the parliamentary Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Hori. And we had a frank, long conversation that went into Japanese-American friendship, Glendale, Osaka, rekindling of Glendale-Osaka sister city relations, Comfort Women Memorial, and so on and so forth. But it's nice to be a relatively small city in the United States, but be at the center of attention of a country like Japan. Yes.
And let's add that one of the outcomes of that meeting was the fact that they are working on the brand library, the Tea House, and doing extensive work with the pond and the plants to make it especially Japanese. And they're planning on doing more work, coming back in January to look at the interior of the tea house and perhaps start working on that. So it was really nice to bring about a collaboration and extend our relationship with the Japanese. It was a great meeting.
And because of Japan's relationship with Glendale and Japanese Consul General's personal relationship with Glendale, the Consul General has organized a concert which is called Japanese and Armenian Classical Music, which will take place on November 18th at the Los Angeles City College's Herb Alpert Music Center. Everyone's encouraged to attend. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silania. Mr. Agajanian.
I would like to thank the Verdugo Woodlands Homeowners Association for inviting us, me, Councilmember Paula Devine, and Mayor Karapetian, to their annual meeting, which was held in, Mr. Mayor, where was it held? In the little
Verdugo
park.
Woodlands.
There was a very little park that I have never been there, anyway. A very pretty park, small one, but I would like to thank them for inviting us.
Well, just a small correction. They had invited every one of the council members. Just the three of you had made it.
We were there, we were there anyway. And the second, as a member of Armenian Society of Los Angeles for 37 years, as has been mentioned here, we have organized appreciation night for city council members. And as a past chairman of the organization, I would like to thank all the council members for participating in that gala. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Agajanian. Yes, the Verdugo Woodlands was at the Catalina Verdugo Adobe on Bonita Street, which is a great facility that city is maintaining, and they're doing a great job. For many of the Woodlanders to know that Myrna Stanley is leaving town, she's moving to Texas, and we surprised her with a mayor's commendation, and we thanked her for her service and her dedication to Verdugo Woodlands, and it was a great event. The Armenian Society of Los Angeles, Irana High, it was a great event. We want to thank them as well. I want to thank them as well for their recognition. As was mentioned, we don't get recognized and honored very, very much, but we thank them for their recognition. On Thursday, when Mr. Sinanian was representing the city at the Glendale Health Summit, I was at the SCAG's meeting. Our meeting starts from 9 to 10, then I have another one from 10 to 12, and 12 to 2:30. So 3 back-to-back meetings. And the main topic was, this is for our staff to know as well, I'm sure that they're aware of it, for the public to know more, is the Air Resources Board is coming out with new regulations and greenhouse gas reduction limits that is going to be implemented soon. I think there is a very important meeting on the 16th. If that is passed, the cities will be obligated to comply with those greenhouse gas reduction numbers, and if they don't, they may be subject to not getting their fair share of the SB1 and SB2 that we really fought hard to pass. And it's kind of a it's one washes the other. I mean, we need the SB1 and SB2 funding to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but they say if you don't do this, you may not get the other one. So I think we have to be on the lookout, Mr. Ochoa, Mr. Golanian, to see what's going on the 16th. We're trying to negotiate. We can do on SCAG level, we can do about 19%, but I think they're asking for 25 to 30%, which is at this point impossible to us to do with the limited resources that we have. With that, I attended so many events. If I want to talk about every single one of them, Mr. Najarian has to join us again and cut me off. So, Mr.
I do have one additional issue, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
And I see we have our Deputy Police Chief here, Carl Povolitis. If I can ask you to come to the podium. We, periodically ask for reports on the sort of the crime situation in the city, and it seems like this latest wave that has started about 2 years ago is intensifying, and more street crime, petty crime as well as more serious crime is becoming more prevalent than it used to be in the last decade. Just recently, cars were broken into on Kenneth, on Virginia, in Northwest, which up till now was relatively sort of immune to that level of street crime. My own car was vandalized, burglarized, whatever you want to call it, also in Northwest. What's happening? What's going on? Are we equipped? Are we ready? Are we funded to deal with this issue properly?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Carl Povolitis, Deputy Police Chief. I'm going to probably beat an old drum here. Some of the policy decisions made by the state, starting all the way back with AB 109, followed by Prop 47, and then most recently Prop 57, has certainly created challenges for communities, including the community of Glendale, as we've sort of closed the prisons, pushed things back to the jail, and pushed people back out onto the street, and limited the consequences of some of those things. And you have seen an increase in crime going over the last couple of years. However, if you actually look at where we are in Glendale, we are starting to finally make some progress, especially in the area of property crimes. The area that you're talking about in the last 90 days did have a couple of residential burglaries and a few car burglaries. But the nice thing about Glendale is been here a while, and the community and the police department really work together, and that partnership is really essential to maintaining a safe community. As cities over 200,000 go, we're still the third safest city in the state of California and the sixth safest in the country, and that's pretty remarkable for a large city. As we look at what's been happening this year, especially with property crimes, we've actually started to see a little bit of a decline going through September 30th, which is the last date that I have sort of full data for. Where we're at now is our overall property crime has actually reduced 10%, so that's a shift in the trend. From 2 years ago, it went up. Last year, it went down just a little bit. This year, it seems to be trending down. Our burglary rate is actually down about 19%. The burglaries from cars are down about 7%. Grand theft's down about 3%, and petty theft is down about 13%. We're still seeing some of the violent crime and some of those changes. We're still experiencing some of that. So I would encourage people to still remain vigilant. We work with the social media platforms. We work with the neighborhoods. We, as the police department, regularly analyze the crime, and we have not only do we direct our patrol resources into the areas where we anticipate that crime will occur, but we also use our crime impact team and our special enforcement detail to provide some extra services in that. when it comes to cars, that continues to be a challenge. And I'm just going to send out sort of some gentle reminders to get tried and true. One is please lock your car. You'll be surprised how many people have their car broken into because someone walks down the street and it's like we forgot the door. I'm going to tell you it's easy to do, especially these days with keyless entry. It's not like you have to turn the lock anymore. Did you hit the right button or the wrong button? So make sure your car is locked. Number two is make sure you don't leave valuables in the car and don't leave them in plain sight, if you will. Hide it, lock it, keep it is kind of the saying. And the other thing is, we've always said it. It's been, very, very, very true here in Glendale. If you see something, say something. And even just as of yesterday, there was somebody who happened to see somebody on someone's back porch wearing masks. I guess we'd call that a clue. They made a phone call to the police department. Their observations, their ability to provide that description allowed us to respond rapidly and arrest suspects for suspicion of burglary. So it's those kind of things that help keep us one of the safest cities. But as said, as property crime goes this year, we've made some positive inroads as a community.
Right, and like you said, in most instances, if they see something valuable in the car, that's when they try to open the door. These cars on Kenneth and on Virginia, I think they used a brick or a stone to break the windows to get in. So that's, whether you lock the door or not, they're getting in.
Yeah, but as I said, we have a lot of people, they will literally walk down the block and they will simply pull doorknobs, and if they find one that's open, then they're going to go in. There are others that will break into it, but again, a lot of times they are looking in the car to see if there's something valuable because they don't want to, necessarily waste their time. There's the chance, with making that kind of noise that somebody will see it or hear it, and then and call the police department. So again, it's like, at least one of the ones I was reviewing, it's like, purses and stuff were visible inside the car. So I encourage people, as I said, hide it, lock it, keep it. Best thing is don't leave it in the car at night. And again, if you see somebody suspicious in your neighborhood, everybody knows their neighborhood. You'll know it, but I know my neighborhood. You'll know your neighborhood better than I will. If you see something that's out of place, call us.
Right, and sometimes in the case of my car, they broke something on the car. They stole something from the car as opposed to inside the car. So from what I'm hearing is that in terms of staffing, we're okay. In terms of funding, we're okay. Training, we're okay. And we're still, in relative terms, one of the safest cities in California and the nation. It's just that everyone's experiencing the same uptick in crime, and we're not immune to it.
Everybody has seen that increase in, we're one of those communities that, as I said, a lot of the people that we find committing crime are coming into our community. They don't necessarily live in the community, but they are coming into the community. But again, we're able to hire, the cream of the crop. The men and women that work for your police department are the best. And it said, and they're out there working diligently and hard. The number of self-initiated activity continues to be excellent, and they continue to make arrests of people who are committing crimes, which gives Glendale that reputation of you really don't want to come here to commit a crime.
We want to keep that reputation.
If I might add, the holidays are coming up. People will be doing shopping, and this is a good time to remind them, hide it, lock it,
keep it.
Yeah, don't forget that, everybody.
Don't leave your packages, visible in the car.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't buy gift for crooks. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
What is next, please?
Community event announcements. This is a 3-minute portion. Also, there's a 3-minute general public comment portion for individuals who wish to forego a 5-minute oral comment period at the conclusion of all city business.
Okay. Cassie McCarty, followed by George Goodrich.
Hello, Mayor and City Council members and city staff. I'm Cassie McCarty. I represent the Glendale Religious Leaders Association, and we are delighted to announce the Glendale Gives Thanks Prayer Breakfast. It's the 54th annual prayer breakfast taking place this coming Thursday, November 9th at 7:30 a.m. at the Civic Auditorium. And tickets are still available. You can go online at glendaleprayerbreakfast.com, or you can purchase your ticket day of. Our featured speaker is Deb Carson. She's a television personality for Fox Television Sports. And we hope everyone here can join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is George Goodrich. Followed by Robert Wollenweber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is George Goodrich, and I want to speak to you today about the potential impact of California Prop 64 here in Glendale. I've lived and worked in Glendale on and off for the last 20 years. Glendale is a wonderful, clean, and safe city, as we just heard. And I believe that allowing pot shops to operate here will erode those qualities. Pot shops attract panhandlers and homeless. Driving becomes more dangerous as marijuana-impaired DUIs and traffic citations skyrocket. Do you really think we'll be able to keep pot-infused candy, baked goods, and sweets from getting into the hands of our kids with pot shops on Brand Boulevard? Good luck with that. Any increased revenues to the city coffers will be more than offset by increased police and emergency service costs to handle increased criminality, DUIs, and traffic accidents. And that little uptick in property crime and quality of life type of crime that you just noticed will be I believe will be greatly exacerbated by the element that pot shops in Glendale would attract. I believe that Glendale will become a more dangerous place if you allow pot shops to operate here. Even though San Diego is allowing pot shops to open, the city of Corona, right next door to San Diego, has voted to ban them, as have many cities in San Diego County. There are already numerous pot shops within a couple of miles of Glendale. Just Google marijuana dispensaries near me to see the medical marijuana dispensaries in Atwater Village, Los Feliz, and Hollywood. Once recreational use becomes legalized starting in 2018, we will probably see hundreds of new pot stores open up in these adjacent neighborhoods. So it's not as if the pot smoking community of Glendale is being deprived. And what's the rush? Why not wait to see the real impact that legalized pot shops will have upon the Los Angeles neighborhoods that have already decided to allow them before rolling the pot shop dice here in Glendale? So you haven't allowed marijuana shops, even medical dispensaries up till now. Well done. Hold the line, and let's keep Glendale safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ms. Valentine. Oh, I'm sorry, Robert.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Just want to speak to you real quick about the signs on Foothill Boulevard up in northern Glendale. When I first saw them, I was a little bit surprised. And I got home, I went on the Facebook La Crescenta page, and it was blowing up with people who were not happy. Basically, what I did is I started a petition. I have 1,066 signatures that I'd like to present to you. It ranges from people wanting them completely removed to people wanting the wordage changed. You can look at the comments. There's many comments here from your voters talking about what they want. I can only speak for myself personally. I just want to tell you that my great-grandparents came here in the early 40s and moved to unincorporated La Crescenta. When my grandfather came back from World War II, he bought a house in northern Glendale, which we've always called La Crescenta. My aunts and uncles live in northern Glendale, La Crescenta area. And 23 years ago, I bought a house in Glendale, which we always call La Crescenta. I've raised 2 kids. I have a wife. And I want to say that I love Glendale. Our police department is awesome. Our fire department is awesome. I love Glendale. And I've always known that where I live is Glendale, particularly when I write that check every other month for the utilities. But just like Montrose, just like Spar Heights, just like Verdugo Woodlands, Whiting Woods, we have a little feeling up there that we're part of something even extra special. And we, on my driver's license it says La Crescenta, on my mail it all says La Crescenta. Again, I know I live in Glendale, but what I personally would like is I don't need the signs torn down. Some people say they're a traffic hazard. Some people say they're just ugly, what have you. All that I personally ask is that there's some type of wordage to designate that we are part of that Crescenta Valley community up there, part of La Crescenta. Maybe something to the effect of welcome to Glendale, and then underneath it something, this is the La Crescenta area, region. I don't know. I'm just a regular guy. I don't know what the wordage would be, but something just to give us, just like Montrose has, just like Spar Heights, Verdugo Woodlands, all these places, just something that we can be proud of and know that we're part of Glendale, but we're also part of our tight-knit Crescenta Valley community. So I would like to submit these to whoever I can give these to. Thank you very much. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ms. Valentine.
Oh, don't tie me yet. I want to apologize about the commotion. The young people, I saw they were an extra hand they can give me. They didn't know who the clerk of the city of Glendale was. They didn't know his name, neither the attorney's name. Anyway, oh, shoot. It's not even. Okay, good evening, and thank you, Mr. Najarian. I heard him someplace. Our seniority. He's the only one that knows the history for this podium. I hope someone is watching at home. First, I'm asking your permission to allow me to protest the DRB hearing this Thursday regarding 2513 East Chevy Chase Drive / Laird, a small open space when compared to the whole big city. It will be a friendly protest unless something changes. The DRB hearing is not working.
DMV hearing?
DRB.
Oh, DRB. I'm sorry.
It's not working. The drawings on the wall are blank. The evidence, people cannot see any. I was watching Rimcrest hearing. The pictures that we're supposed to see, they are not there. People cannot get involved and they can't get informed. That's number one. Number two, I don't like coming here. But now you see what happened next to my house. The lot for sale is the exact deer crossing to get across Chevy Chase. I can't believe I'm going to eat the architect's words. This is the only location where the deer cross across the Chevy Chase to go up to Sconzo Gardens. From my house to the Derby house. Now they want to put a house there. Number two, that's not going to happen. But I have two questions to the city attorney. I cannot go to his office because he hides behind the wall. He won't come out. He knows. I spend a lot of effort. Tonight, the girls in the back said, I wanted to leave some mail. They said, come back tomorrow. I'm not coming back tomorrow. If I drive, I'll get another traffic ticket. Okay, so I like to find out. Would it be possible to find out the guidelines about conducting the public hearing on Thursday? If the evidence is not visible, is that a public hearing? Now, the last thing I'm bringing up again from a year ago, the arrow that needs to be placed on the dangerous curve that killed Paul. Yes, Paul did not want to die. No, he didn't want to die. He looked good. He could have stayed alive. I wanted to ask the attorney if that was my only option, go to court, file a case so that the public works can put up a sign on the curve. Or will the judge come out and put the damn sign on the curve? Thank you, Mr. Najarian. Did I thank him?
He's in bed.
Your timer, Mrs. Valentine.
You forgot your timer, Ms. Valentine.
Exactly.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mike Van Gordes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. I wanted to speak real quickly. The extension of the present terms of the City Council to comply with the report we just heard tonight gives us a really significant opportunity to look into other really pressing electoral reforms. Like we need districting, and I'm especially happy to hear Councilmember Sinani talking about his concerns for the muffling of people's speech during elections, in that the most pressing concern is money in politics. So that is something that really needs to be addressed with this extra 11 months that we have until the next forthcoming election. And I'd also like to, on a separate note, ask the members of the City Council to please consider agendizing a discussion of rent control, because this problem isn't going away. People are still in crisis, and we're still working on solutions with the Glendale Tenants Union. But I'd like to have public commentary on that. Thank you.
Thank you. What's next, Mr. Safian?
Next item on the agenda under 8B is Director of Public Works regarding Safe Routes to School Improvements Project, Hoover Keppel Toll Schools and Chevy Chase Drive. E1 is a motion awarding a construction contract to Paul Pink DBA Excel Paving Company in the amount of $1,258,891.50, authorizing to execute the contract and approving a 15% reserve for contingencies in the amount of $188,833,073.
Mr. Galanian?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. I have a brief presentation for you. Since 2011, we have embarked on a Safe Route to School improvement program and have taken advantage of several federal and state-funded projects. Oops. Some of the goals of the Safe Route to School programs are to encourage the biking and walking of students to their schools, as well as their parents and caretakers, to increase safety and mobility for pedestrians and cyclists. As you heard the mayor mention the greenhouse gas reduction goals. This will promote getting people out of their cars instead of driving, hopefully walking to school. And enhance public health, which specifically would help to reduce childhood obesity. Since 2012, we have completed 4 phases of these programs, 4 projects essentially, and implemented safety improvements around 20 schools already for a combined total project cost of just over $2.7 million so far. This current phase of the program will involve safety improvements around Hoover Keppel Toll schools, as well as Roosevelt Middle School, Horace Mann Elementary School, John Muir Elementary School, and the Garfield campus of Glendale Community College. The project is divided essentially into 2 major segments, one involving around Hoover Keppel Toll. The improvements will span on Kenilworth from Glen Oaks Boulevard leading to the schools, on Concord Street from Glen Oaks Boulevard again leading to the schools, and more specifically some improvements that will go over around the very busy Virginia, Palm, South, and Highland intersections. The other segment of the project concentrates improvements along Chevy Chase Drive, leading from Roosevelt Middle School on the west side. Some very specific concrete improvements at Mariposa intersection, mid-block of Chevy Chase Drive, La Boyce Drive, and leading all the way to Muir Elementary School. Some of the major safety components of the project include realignment of some intersections and curb lines, reducing wide radius of some curb returns, construction of new curb ramps, and modification of existing curb ramps to meet the most current ADA guidelines, construction of curb bump outs, or some people call it bulb outs. They're essentially curb extensions to reduce the crossing distance from one side of the sidewalk to another for students and pedestrians, and medians at some intersections. Relocation of some existing street lights that will be necessary because of some conflicts with the improvements, and installation of new street lights. Traffic striping, pavement marking, signage, sharrows, and high visibility zebra crosswalks. This aerial depicts what the end product would look like around Virginia's South, Palm, and Highland intersections. You can see the curb extensions shortening the crosswalks, the high visibility yellow crosswalks, and the realignment of the intersections. Here's another example of what it would look like. You see the median at Concord and Kenilworth. Right now, we're using delineators. That will be replaced with concrete median and some curb extensions, again, high visibility zebra crossings. There's some ancillary work that we have added to this project. It includes removal, replacement of broken, damaged sidewalks, driveway aprons, bus pads, curbs and gutters, removal, replacement of deteriorated asphalt pavement, repaving with rubberized asphalt, and planting of at least 29 new trees. Oops. So sensitive. Staff had done extensive community outreach. We've held 5 meetings on February 28th with Glendale Unified School District staff, March 15th with Hoover Capitol neighborhood residents, March 22nd with residents along Chevy Chase Drive, April 5th with GCC Garfield campus staff and GUSD, April 12th with Adams Hill Homeowners Association's Board of Directors. We provided information and details regarding the project and received their feedback. The project schedule, again, we have coordinated with GUSD administration and scheduled the construction around the immediate vicinity of schools during the 2018 school summer break. The rest of the construction work will continue after the school starts next year. The engineer's estimate for this project was $1.3 million. We received 4 good bids. Excel Paving Company was the lowest bidder. They have done several work in the recent past for the city. The total project cost, including contingency and construction management, is $1,636,000 and change. Of that amount, we'll receive federal funds for $1.478 million and change, and the city's contribution will be $158,132. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions?
I think it's a pretty comprehensive plan.
I'm just curious. We've implemented 4 stages of this program. This is obviously a very important program. It addresses the safety of our greatest asset, our children. Is there measurable data showing the impact of these changes, like increase in safety, or I don't know, what are the metrics that we're using to show this is why it makes sense to do this thing, this program, in order to achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve?
Councilman Sinanian, excellent question. We have the before data that we have collected before we came up with proposals for safety improvements around the school, and I do believe the Community Development Department has hired a consultant that have collected some additional data in regards to safety improvements and accidents and the numbers before and after that we can provide a comparison, and that staff report should come to you in the near future.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to see that staff report.
Well, I was going to mention this on my council comment, but I waited for this report to come up, and this is a testament of the City of Glendale cooperating and collaborating with the Glendale Unified School District, as well as Glendale, our partners at the GCC, and the number of meetings that was conducted between our staff and their staff to make sure this is a safe route to school. And thank you, Mr. Gulani. I don't have a question. I just wanted to ask, again, I was going to ask this at the council comments, but I just waited until this report to come out. Maybe about our meetings with the Glendale Unified School District. 1 or 2 of them were canceled due to the scheduling conflict, and I just don't want the community to think that we are not meeting, we are not collaborating, we are not working with our partners at GCC and the GUSD. So I want to ask if possible, as soon as possible, to schedule another meeting with the GUSD so we can work our way into this new year and new programs that we have. With that, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, you have a card.
Is there a card? This is item 8B.
I'm sorry, I put the wrong number in.
But would you like to speak?
Yeah, this item about the grant, please.
Floor is all yours, Mr. Mohill.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, got the wrong number there.
That's okay, no worries.
Good evening.
We all make mistakes.
Hey, it's where we have erasers on our pens.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor Garpetti and council members. My name is Mike Mohill. We all like grant money. It's wonderful because it doesn't come out of the city general fund. It comes from someplace else, perhaps from the county, the state, or the federal government. It's wonderful to have grant money. But shouldn't grant money be supplemental from money that's coming out of the general fund? Unfortunately, we don't have money in the general fund to do these projects. The question, council members, where is all that money going to that should be used for this? You all know where that money is going to. It's being funneled to pay for the retirement pensions for a union workforce. If we didn't have that, the city would have money and not keep begging and look out and putting projects for those grants. Again, grants are wonderful. Love them all. But they should be supplemental from money that comes out of the general fund. And when the percentage, for example, the police and fire budget, 80% almost today approaching the cost of our police and fire department, which includes the pension liability. We're in dire needs, this city. And I hope the new city manager addresses it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohill.
What's our parks annual budget, not counting any grants?
It's about $9 million in the general fund. So you pay state, local, federal taxes now. You do, I do, we all do. And then you get some of that money back. I suppose we could forego any of that and let Pasadena, Burbank, LA take those monies. But I guess that would be the kind of sucker move that then Mr. Mohill would decry at some other point.
So we spend $9 million on our parks every year. That's good.
Okay, next item, please.
Have a roll call.
Roll call.
Council members Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Director of Community Development at 8C, Director of Community Services and Parks at 8C regarding award of grant fund from California Park and Recreation Society's Healthy Play Funding Initiative and Training Program for the replacement of playground equipment at Carr and Nibley Parks. C1 is a motion authorizing to accept a grant in the amount of $154,299.55. 2 is a resolution dispensing with competitive bids and authorizing to execute a purchase order in the amount of $524,254.32, net of $154,299.55 from grant funds to Game Time for the purchase and installation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As part of the city's ongoing effort to replace existing playgrounds and to meet current safety and accessibility standards, Community Service and Parks is seeking approval for the replacement of 2 existing playgrounds, one being at Carr Park and one being at Nibley. So at Carr Park, we have approximately 6,500 square feet of total play area. The total playground cost at Carr with the grant discount would be $289,948. Both designs will encompass 6 key elements of play, such as climbing, sliding, swinging, balancing, and spinning into all new play areas, which will attract new users, encourage interaction and support, and provide a full spectrum of evidence-based activities for all children for children of all ages and abilities. Nibley Park, we have about 6,100 square feet. After the grant discount, total project cost would be $240,659. Carr has 62 different amenities. Nibley will have 36 different amenities as part of their playground. The project timeline for both parks, we're hoping after tonight we'll process a purchase order with our finance department. We will like both projects completed by March 2nd, so we can showcase both parks at the California Parks and Recreation Society conference in mid-March. The grant award was given by CPRS and Game Time. Game Time is the supplier of the playground equipment, and they're part of the U.S. Communities List, which is a nationwide purchasing program that allows public agencies to pool their purchasing power through nationally solicited contracts that have been competitively bid out. So that's why staff's requesting to dispense competitive bidding and go with Game Time so we can meet the March 2nd deadline or early March deadline.
So because CPRS partnered up with Game Time, they are qualified to receive this grant on their behalf.
Yes.
And that's why, and this project has to be done by March.
By March. We're one of 5 cities in the state of California that received the grant.
So if we don't do this, we will lose the major portion of our grant.
Yes, we will lose $154,000.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Mr. Arjan.
Could you, for the benefit of our viewers, mention the address on this park and the following one?
The actual address, Carr Park is on Colorado, right behind Glendale High School. It borders Eagle Rock and Glendale. It is in the South Glendale area. Nibley Park is on Mountain, North Glendale. The actual address, I don't have. My apologies.
Okay. Any more questions? I have one card, Mr. Mohil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Mike Mohil again. Grant money, we all love it. Even Burbank and Pasadena has their hand out too, because they are running as irregular as we are. They also have they have pension debt just like us. That's where all our money is going to, out of the park department, to pay for the salaries and the pensions of our union workforce. Mr. Ochoa, when you started here, our pension liability at the time was about 1.2 unfunded. Today it's nearly $2 billion under your watch, 6 years. That's your leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, the viewing audience, the city is not run very well. When the city has to have their hand out, don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen, the viewing audience, grant money, yes, we pay taxes. That's true. And we should get our fair share. But we should delegate and put away more of the general fund money for our parks department. That department, from my last count, is very, very little compared to 10 years ago, even less than it was 20 years ago. When was the last time anybody heard that the city built a brand new park? No way. Because all the park money is going to where? The salaries and the pensions of our union workforce, ladies and gentlemen, the viewing audience. Thank God for grant money. I remember our previous park director once said to me, Mike, we aren't building anything new because we don't have any money. We count on grant money to make our parks grow and get better and fix things. Isn't it sad this city has zero money for its parks department? It's all being funded and transferred out from the people's pocket to the employees' pocket, the money. Grants, again, are great. We put our hand out like all the cities in the state of California, be it county, state, federal, it doesn't matter. But when you have a poor city manager advising the council how they should spend their money, this is what we have today, an upside-down budget. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Mr. Mohill, Mike, with all due respect, $9 million is the budget, the city's budget. You're saying we spend zero on parks.
We spend very little. When was the last time we built a park?
Mr. Ochoa, last year.
From whose money?
Well, we did the
Where did we get the money?
Maryland Avenue.
Where did we get the money?
One at a time. Let's not.
Okay, where did we get
Let's
the
take
money?
our turn. So we won't.
You
we
just
won't
built
talk over each
Maryland
other.
Avenue Park. You just did the major renovation on Palmer Park. So and you've Maryland is a brand new park where there was no park there before. So that was last year.
And also, besides Palmer Park, Maple Park was a major renovation. It's like building a brand new park. We also are in the process of building soccer fields with our partners at GUSD. That's a $10 million project or $10.1 million project. And we are doing our best with our resources. And I want public to know this, because it's not that we don't spend any money on our parks. And it takes a lot to keep our parks the way they are. And go take a look at it. They're all clean. They're all nice. They're all green. They're all accessible. They all have good playgrounds for children. We have passive parks for seniors to walk around and read a book and have a cup of coffee. Go to all of our parks on the weekends and see how heavily it's being used, but yet they are well maintained. And I understand the concerns of some of the community members, but I really don't appreciate the facts being twisted every time. Like we are not doing any of this. This is a great city. It's a clean city. It's a safe city. So we have to sometimes take a step back and appreciate what we have instead of just throwing a rock at a glass house. So with that, if there is any other questions or comments, thank you, Mr. Bulani.
Can I move it?
Yes, please.
Can I move the item 8C, I guess?
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian?
Yes.
Divine?
Yes.
Najarian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item on the agenda is oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. City manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Okay, thank you. First speaker is Sherry Stubbs, followed by Daniel Brotman, followed by Mike Mohill.
Hello, my name is Sherry Stubbs, resident of North Glendale. I want to address the petition signatures that were presented to you a little while ago. I have looked at the signatures, and many of them, and they are heartfelt, yes. But are they accurate in their statements? No. A while back, I emailed all of you, except for newly elected Councilman Agajanian, a lengthy response to a similarly fallacious petition regarding the entry markers. That response applied then, and it's still good now. But in addition, it is hard to argue for or against a position when the position fails to state any accurate facts, which is the case here. What is happening is that a minority, and I know he said 1,000 signatures, but I will wager they're, who knows where they're from. People have used social media to present their feelings and opinions, none of which of the statements I reviewed were true as to fact with respect to the entry markers. The fact is that from Pennsylvania Avenue on the east to Lowell Avenue on the west is the city of Glendale, and has been since the 1950s. This particular project of the entry markers has been in process since the spring of 2015, more than 2 years. It was well publicized by the city. Jackie Bartlow has been wonderful. And input was solicited and encouraged throughout, since the beginning. The city has been involved throughout the duration of the project. The markers are noted in our North Glendale Community Plan. They are there. The naysayers, if you will, have presented not one iota of proof or a valid reason that the entry markers should be removed or the project halted. To the contrary, we would ask that the work be expedited and completed as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I just want to make one quick comment on this issue. Is we're either Glendale or we're not. If you look at the signs, no, I'm just making a comment. I'm not responding to your comments. If you look at the signs, it's been very sensitive to the North Glendale identity of North Glendale, and that is the River Rock, which is on that sign. River Rock by North Glendale La Crescenta, you can identify. That's their identity. And if you look at the Wells Fargo Bank that was designed on Foothill, they still implemented the River Rock in there because that's part of their history and identity. And we were sensitive to that. And I really believe that we need to be one city and not say, okay, we are here, but I want to be the other one. So it's kind of not right. So next speaker is Mr. Brockman.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, Mayor Garpetti, council members, staff. I'm coming here before council once again to talk about the Grayson power plant. As you know, there are many things that trouble me about this project, but I'll just address one today, and that has to do with greenhouse gas emissions. It's a timely topic given what we know is going on in Bonn. As you know, the council passed a resolution in July to join the mayor's National Climate Action Agenda. This is an initiative that started back in 2014, but it's taken on special significance since the U.S. announced that it was planning on pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. And I know that in the case of Glendale's decision, it was specifically tied to this idea of supporting the spirit and goals of Paris. So what are these goals? I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but the main goal is to keep global average temperatures from rising more than 2% above pre-industrial levels. There's scientists that study what they call the carbon budget. What they mean by that is how much carbon we have left in the world to spend before we get to the point where it's physically impossible to stay below that 2% line. And what they're concluding is that we are really very, very close to using up our budget. An influential paper that was published last year by Oxford University argued that in order to meet the Paris target, no, and I'm going to quote here, no new investment in fossil fuel infrastructure, no new investment in fossil fuel electricity infrastructure without carbon capture is feasible from 2017 at the latest. So we're faced with a tough decision here in Glendale. We have an aging plant that we need to do something about eventually. But what do? Glendale Water and Power has a plan which they like to call a repowering. They say they're taking out old generators and replacing them with new, cleaner burning equipment. In presentations they gave earlier in the year, they've said, and I quote, the repowered units are more energy efficient, create less emissions, and increase reliability of the power grid. That sounds good. But the part about creating less emissions is just not true. You can fudge a presentation, but you can't fudge an EIR. The greenhouse gas emissions are going up by a lot. I have a table. I left it back there. I didn't bring it. I can show it to you later. But a table from the EIR is basically about as clear as you can get. Emissions from the new units will be almost 7 times those of the old units. I'm not making that up, 7 times. The net increase over baseline is little over 415,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year, which if you use a nifty tool that the EPA has to convert carbon to things that we can understand easily, that's like adding 90,000 cars to Glendale's roads. Now, GWP doesn't call this an expansion. Obviously it is. It has to be. The only way you can put in cleaner burning equipment and still have emissions going up is if you have expanded generation. But I'll talk about that another time. Glendale Water and Power talks about mitigating using carbon credits it has in the bank or it gets for free from the Air Resources Board. But this is really an accounting fiction. The fact is that the decision to build Grayson will increase net greenhouse gases significantly. And also, one other important point when we talk about mitigation, the 415,000 tons of greenhouse gases that we are mitigating with these carbon credits is only from combustion of gas to produce electricity. It does not include all the methane that gets released in the process of fracking, transporting, storing, and handling gas. Methane, as you probably know, is 86 times as potent as carbon dioxide in warming the planet. And as leak detection and measurement improves, we're learning that this problem is many times bigger than we once thought. In fact, many are now arguing that natural gas, in fact, is really not much of an improvement over coal, and in fact may even be worse because of these leaks. What's sad is that there are great alternatives to gas, but in its zeal to replace Grayson, we really have not seriously explored them. I'll come back another time to talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Mohill.
Good evening, Mayor, Vartan Council members. You changed the time of the discussion on the appointment of our new city manager, the interim. And I know this is supposed to be the already discussed, but with your permission, I give my speech I was going to give. Could you change the timing with your permission?
My thought, the meeting starts at 6 o'clock. You have the authority to move anything on the agenda forward or backwards.
You made no change. You made no announcement. That's why I'm asking.
Let Mr. Garcia finish, Mr.
So
Chair.
it is within your just however this item was on the agenda, was addressed, it was adopted. So you're not required to give him that time.
I understand. I just for your information, we moved it up because I don't want this to go out and make something else.
I know.
That we moved it because you were not here and we
I know
wanted
that. I know
to
that.
exclude you and everything else.
I know that.
We moved it because to accommodate Mr. Najarian, who was on the phone and he had only a certain...
Can I ask you this? Because I didn't know, because this seems like every time someone's on vacation or whatever, we don't know if they're going to be called in, the council people, and things get changed, the calendar, at the last moment.
That's the way the business is conducted. That's the price to pay to sit up here. But I will allow you to, but I hope your statement is all accurate statement. It's not
now
like you were saying in the last 2-3 weeks. There's a few things that you mentioned. So I hope your statement is an accurate one. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Garpetian and council member. My name is Mike Mohill. You recently gave our former city manager, Scott Ochoa, his walking papers because the majority of you did not like his performance. Tonight you want to appoint his assistant, Yasmin Beers, as the interim city manager with an approximately $2,400 per month pay increase or $28,000 a year. About 16 months ago, council gave Mrs. Beers about a $48,000 a year pay raise for doing exactly the same job. Should council grant Mrs. Beers another pay raise, that will mean that in about 16 months, she will receive a whopping $76,000 pay increase. Is government employment above the law of private industry? In private industry, an interim employee generally does not get a pay raise, but continued employment. As we learned a few weeks ago, the majority of council members are putting their bets on Mrs. Beers as our next city manager. Will the majority on council skew the job description for the executive search firm to make Mrs. Beers a shoo-in? 6 years ago, we had more qualified candidates than Mr. Ochoa, but the majority on council skewed the job description in his favor. Mrs. Beers was part of the Ochoa Beers team that in 2012 laid off about 25% of our labor force. However, at the same time, our unfunded pension liabilities were about $1.2 billion, and today, 6 years later, with fewer employees, our unfunded liabilities have grown to almost $2 billion. Mr. Cho and Mrs. Beers have only balanced the budget into the black year after year by raising fees, taxes, and water and electric rates. With the help of Mrs. Beers, Mr. Cho is leaving the city more in the red than when he arrived 6 years ago. We want our next city manager to not play political games and not be a politician. Our next city manager should not have benefited and be part of the corrupt and irresponsible CalPERS pension system. We need a business person who would run our city like a business and not an opportunity to get rich at the expense of struggling families. We need an individual who would tell our council members and the public the retirement pension system is broken. Our new city manager should strive to fix our problems and not look to Sacramento or Washington, D.C. for a bailout. A manager who will tell the public of the hidden deals of the past 10 years, especially the Americana at Brand. All pay raises for the city employees should be frozen until we can balance the budget without gouging the folks who pay the bills. Finally, we need a city manager who will stand up to the city unions, not play games, and most of all, not lie to our council members and the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Next speaker is
It's just Mike Mono.
yeah, I mean,
although I will say though, sir, I think he's getting his he's doing the wrong math. You have $1.2 billion in assets with PERS, $1.6 billion in liability. That's what we've talked about repeatedly for quite some time. I think he's taking the difference of $400 million, applying it to the 1.6 and coming up with $2 billion and magically saying that it's unfunded, but that's for a different day, I suppose.
thank you, Mr. Michelle, for the clarification. Next speaker is Bill Wiseman.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, City staff, and the public. My name is Bill Weissman from far north Glendale. And a little bit of the history of far north Glendale. Back in 1952, which was a couple of years before I was born, the citizens who live between Lowell and Pennsylvania voted to annex themselves to the city of Glendale. And of course, I wasn't around for that event, but rumor has it that one of the more important reasons why people voted to annex themselves to Glendale is because they wanted more reliable water and electricity service. And so, unfortunately, there are still people who are mad and upset over that decision, as you can see with the petition that has been submitted. But when we moved to Glendale in 1986, this sign was already here. This is the one at Pennsylvania. There's an identical one at Foothill. It does mention Crescenta Highlands, which is the local neighborhood name, but the message "Welcome to Glendale" has been there for decades, and I guess I have real trouble understanding why that message is offensive when it's on a monument sign in the middle of the street, and it's not offensive when it's on a sign next to the street. Be that as it may, rather than focus on the negative stuff, I really would like to thank the City of Glendale for all of their efforts in getting these signs installed. This was an outgrowth of the North Glendale Community Plan. We worked very hard, a number of us, with city staff over a period of several years. And I especially want to thank Jackie Bartlow, and I want to thank our Public Works Department and our Community Development Department, whose staff have been working on this for a long time. And they've been very patient, and they've listened to everybody's input, and they've done an excellent job of keeping us posted about the status and the process for what's going on with the signs. So again, thanks to the City of Glendale, and I will go ahead and leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weissman.
I'd just like to say it's awfully nice to end the meeting with a positive message. Thank you.
So from here on, you will be the last speaker. Every meeting.
There you go. I'll second that.
Is there a motion? Is there any new business? No? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Adjourn.